Chapter 1838, One Step. Zhang Yi wanted to try and see if Loridek's ability to absorb supernatural attacks would also work against physical attacks. However, in the face of this bullet, Loridek simply swung his sword backhand. Bing! The nuclear bullet, which was traveling at dozens of times the speed of sound, was directly cut in half by Loridek's sword. Zhang Yi was not surprised. The top-level killing machine created by mechanical civilization could not possibly block a bullet created by human technology. But this also confirmed Zhang Yi's judgment in his heart. Attacks launched in the form of energy would be absorbed and rebounded. However, attacks in physical form were difficult to completely digest. Shall we try it with the Reaper of Love? Zhang Yi had this thought in his heart. Although Morana did not communicate with Zhang Yi again, Zhang Yi knew that she was also waiting for the opportunity to use Absolute Zero, to cooperate with Yang Xinxin's fallen angel puppet. There was only one perfect opportunity, and they must ensure that they hit their target with one strike. However, there was a very thorny problem in front of them. Just as they could use Emperor Indra's ability as a prophet to obtain intelligence about Loridek's abilities, Loridek also had a good grasp of the abilities of everyone present. Intelligence was shared among mechanical life forms in real time, which meant that Zhang Yi, Yang Xinxin, and Morana could see every moment of the battle between them and the demon god Yi. Loridek was bound to be on his guard. If you play your cards openly, it's a matter of who can hide more cards and play the ones in their hand better. It seems that ordinary attack methods are useless against him. If you want to win him as soon as possible, you have to fight up close. After Odin's attack was absorbed and reversed by Loridek, this also made the Nordic god of war completely furious. The Eternal Lance, which was said to be certain to hit, was easily dissipated, which undoubtedly made him lose face. The eight-winged Pegasus under him let out an angry neigh, and Odin took a silver lance from the horse's body with his right hand, riding the horse towards Loridek in a direct charge. Lightning was wrapped around the feet of the eight-winged Pegasus, and its speed was as swift as the wind and lightning. This was also a level Epsilon war beast, and only with such a mount could one be called a true cavalryman. The man and horse were one, their speed incredible, leaving trails of lightning in their wake. He brandished his spear, and before Zhang Yi and the others could say a word, he was charging headlong at Loridek. The Pegasus was charging, and he gripped his spear and thrust it straight at Loridek's chest. Rumble! Storms and thunder swirled around him, the sky and earth changing colors. The power of this spear thrust was terrifying. King Arthur, Emperor Indra, and Zhang Yi did not hesitate and struck from the side at the same time. Saladin's body also instantly merged with the ground, turning into a huge shadow that rushed to the side of Loridek. The spear pierced Loridek's chest, containing a magnificent amount of energy. This strike could easily flatten a mountain. Seeing this, Loridek did not dodge, but raised the sword in his hand and swept it across. The tip of the spear collided with the blade in midair, with lightning and thunder, and streams of silver lightning emanated from the spear, the pressure of the explosion causing the already dilapidated land to once again explode, sending up a cloud of dust. Clang! The sound of the metal collision was so loud, the two enormous forces collided. Odin's spear had already exploded with full force, and it was clear that the spear had become bent due to the collision. However, the thunder was instantly drawn away the moment it touched the sword-eating sword. Loridek exerted himself suddenly, sending Odin and his horse flying in a direct bullet. At the same time, waiting for him were King Arthur's sword, Emperor Indra's golden arrow from the final reincarnation, and Zhang Yi's sniper shot. Loridek's feet barely moved from the spot as he raised his hands, holding one black and one red battle sword. With one slash, he slashed King Arthur's sword energy, and with the other, he blocked Emperor Indra's golden arrow. As for Zhang Yi's powerful shield-piercing spear, in his eyes it was the weakest attack, as it was just an ordinary sniper shot. Although it was difficult to dodge due to the interference of others and the characteristics of Zhang Yi's ability, however, Loridek is in possession of the top-level demon god body of mechanical civilization. His choice was to directly use his body to catch it. Kacha! He opened his mouth, revealing a mouthful of white teeth, and then used this mouthful of white teeth to directly bite the bullet shot by Zhang Yi. The bullet, traveling at dozens of times the speed of Mach, was actually caught by his teeth, without even breaking them. Such physical strength makes one wonder what kind of monster this is. Rumble. The nuclear bullet exploded directly in Loradek's mouth. Zhang Yi was not very happy about it. He knew that an attack of this magnitude could not hurt Loradek. However, the other party's power exceeded his imagination, which made Zhang Yi extremely headache. Moreover, from beginning to end, the other party was only defending against their offensive, without choosing to attack actively. Huh! Zhang Yi suddenly realized something was wrong. The strength that Loradek displayed could easily overwhelm anyone else present. Even if it was out of caution, he did not actively attack the people present. But even if he needed to figure out the trump cards of the Allied Army's mutants, he didn't need to play so conservatively. Zhang Yi's eyes fixed on Loradek's body, and suddenly he thought of something. At this moment, a flash of unusual color suddenly appeared in Loradek's eyes. His body suddenly stiffened in place. He tried to raise his right hand, but found that his body seemed to be under some kind of restraint, making it very difficult to move. When Loradek's eyes flashed, and it was obvious that this was some kind of restraint ability. He had actually let himself be caught without knowing it. Do it! Saladin's voice rang out in everyone's ears. Loradek didn't notice that the shadow beneath his feet had already been invaded by something else. Saladin, the Lord of Shadows, can turn into nothingness in his ghost form, whether it be into a dark cloud to become a demon or into a shadow to control someone else's body. The key is that this ability is silent and difficult to guard against. While Zhang Yi and the others had just joined forces to attract Loradek's attention, Saladin had already taken control of Loradek's shadow, and then used this to control Loradek's body. Loradek's power was incredibly strong. In the past, any opponent who had fallen victim to this technique had been unable to do anything but submit to Saladin's control. But when used on Loradek, it only managed to restrict his mobility. Seeing this, the others wasted no time in striking again. This time, all the mutants present unleashed their abilities, and dozens of attacks struck Loradek in a variety of ways. These were some of the world's top mutants, and their combined attack was something even Loradek, in his prime, could not have stopped. He felt the power of the combo and the restrictions on his body. He immediately noticed the abnormality of his shadow, but at this time, he was unable to deal with the attacks coming from all directions. So at this time, he removed a red energy crystal embedded in his arm. It became blazingly bright in Loradek's palm, and it burned fiercely. A magnificent power instantly poured out of his palm, like an energy wave of the ocean, sweeping in all directions with him at the center. It was as if the Reaper of Love had erupted, with terrifying energy shockwaves rippling one after the other, like a tsunami destroying everything along the coast, crashing against dozens of mutant attacks. The terrifying energy fluctuations generated intense radiation that even temporarily disabled everyone's communication equipment. King Arthur and the others had to retreat far away to avoid being impacted by the energy. Whoosh! Saladin's body returned to its human form from the ground, and his face was also a bit pale. Although he was able to turn into a two-dimensional shadow, this pure energy impact could still injure him. He had to give up control of Loradek and flee. After everyone arrived at a safe area, they all looked forward, to the direction where Loradek was. The strength of that power was incredibly terrifying, and it was a level that even a bishop-level mutant would be injured if they were caught in it. Especially Loradek, who was at the source of the explosion, even if he was able to use the detonation of the red energy crystal to block everyone's attacks. But if the after-effects of the energy impact licked him even a little, it would definitely have an impact. I just don't believe that guy's body can't be damaged. Emperor Indra had already raised his hand, and another golden sacred arrow was ready to go. As soon as Loradek appeared, he was ready to attack with the others. Zhang Yi in the distance, however, frowned. He said to Morana, "Something's wrong. Did you notice?" Morana's cold voice came back, "Indeed. After the powerful energy impact slowly dissipated, the ground had already become sunken, but Loridek was still standing at the edge of the crater, blocking the way of everyone. Finally, shallow cracks appeared on his armor. "It's working!" someone whispered excitedly. This result was not unexpected. They had already studied the demon god body, and that material was indeed very strong, even beyond anything currently known to humans. However, everyone understands the truth that nothing is unbreakable. As long as the destructive power is strong enough, even Loridek, the leader of the 10 demon gods, will definitely be destroyed by the joint attack of everyone. From this situation, as long as we continue to launch joint attacks, although time will take a little longer, we will definitely be able to kill him," King Arthur said in a deep voice, holding the knight longsword in his hand. Everyone nodded, their eyes becoming feverish. It was good to see the hope of victory. As long as they killed demon god Jia, it would also be a complete declaration of victory in their war against mechanical civilization. This was something that made them incredibly proud. For the first time, it made them feel a sense of honor for the human race as a collective. "Don't get too excited," Zhang Yi's voice came coldly. Everyone froze upon hearing this. Zhang Yi reminded them, "Pay attention to his feet. That guy hasn't moved a single step the entire time." Everyone looked in the direction of the sound and their expressions immediately changed. Some looked solemn, while others looked terrified. It was extremely difficult to fight against dozens of powerful human epsilon mutants at the same time. But to keep their bodies in the same position was even more difficult. They could hardly imagine if Loridek had not stood there motionless, but had chosen to attack instead, would he have slaughtered them like a tiger among sheep? The mutants of bishop level were lucky. Each of them had powerful abilities and secret trump cards to protect their lives. As for the others, they were afraid that they would be killed like cutting melons. "He is guarding something, and that thing should be related to the deep pit behind him," Zhang Yi reminded everyone, while also pondering it in his heart. Everyone is no fool. Watching Loridek guarding the pit behind him to the death, they thought back to the 6-month-long digging operation carried out by mechanical civilization in Fremons. They suddenly understood that behind Loridek was something important that their mechanical civilization had been desperately searching for. King Arthur's gaze became a little fiery, as did Emperor Indra's. Although it was unclear what that thing was, it must be an extraordinary treasure. If they could obtain it, it would bring unimaginable benefits. Emperor Indra immediately said, "Then let's attack him, along with the abyss behind him." A cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Make him have to run around in circles. Attacking what he must save is a very useful tactic." Although they had not discovered any weaknesses in Loridek's abilities, a psychological weakness was also a weakness. Good idea. The targets of their attacks were no longer limited to Loridek. King Arthur's sword attack covered Loridek and the abyss behind him. Zhang Yi also used his ability Lord of War, for the first time in a long time. The armaments from the Fremons armory deployed in the sky in unison, comparable to the artillery fire of several legions, with countless barrels and gun barrels pointing at the abyss. A volley of thousands of cannons. The shells rained down from the sky, and the range covered by the rain of fire enveloped the entire abyss. Emperor Indra's Vishnu divine bow shot out a golden sacred arrow, and at the same time, the myriad divine will hovering above the fingertips of one of his palms suddenly released from his fingertips. The myriad divine will disappeared from view, only to reappear in 2, then 4, then countless forms, densely covering a space and hurtling towards Loridek. Loridek's gaze grew gloomy. He knew that the other party had discovered something. He couldn't help but feel a little anxious, because down below, the 6-winged sovereign absolutely must not be disturbed in what it was doing. Loridek's legs spread apart on the ground, and a reddish glow gradually appeared in his pupils. System overload. His cyborg body suddenly made a click sound, as if the gears were screaming, and streams of red light surged out from his torso. You could even see white smoke rising from the joints of his body. Loridek, the perfect artificial human of the Tsang-era mechanical civilization, is the product of the perfect fusion of man and machine. He possesses the powerful abilities of a top-level mutant and the most powerful combat mech. The point where machinery is stronger than humans is that there are no restrictions of thought, and it can be overloaded to achieve a significant increase in combat effectiveness in a short period of time. Boom! He stomped on the ground, completely pulverizing the ground beneath his feet. He soared into the air, his hands brandishing the sword as it danced in his grip, while hundreds of red laser beams shot out from all over his body, cutting through the sky with the precision and sharpness of hundreds of scalpels. The barrage of bullets was like a rain of fire, with a large number of shells being precisely cut in half by the laser and exploding in midair. Boom! 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 The sky was filled with fireworks. Loredek's figure was everywhere in the sky. His right hand, the sword of devouring, devoured all attacks of energy bodies, and then his left hand, the broken sword, transformed the attacks into his own attacks and swept them away again. In an instant, Zhang Yi and the others' combined attack was completely blocked by him. Even though Zhang Yi and the others had been prepared, they were still stunned as they watched the scene unfold. Is this the charm of cyberpunk? Zhang Yi couldn't help but mutter to himself. In the shadow space, Liu Karen watched all this with burning eyes. The combination of machine and man can achieve this level. This is fantastic. Uncle Yu crossed his arms and watched the scene with burning eyes. He wondered if he could become a being like demon god Jia and no longer be a burden to Zhang Yi. He couldn't help but ask Liu Karen, "Miss Liu, do you think I could one day become like him?" Liu Karen didn't turn around, her eyes were completely focused on the figure of Loredek. It was difficult to see his movements with the naked eye, and one could only use equipment to capture his trajectory. But even if it was hard to see, one could still see the general outline of Commander blocking the attacks of dozens of Epsilon-class mutants. How could this not make one feel happy? There will be a day, there has to be. As long as they can obtain the demon god machine, Liu Karen's ability, transform from nothing, can quickly crack it. Supernatural powers are the driving force behind human evolution. And the evolution of Epsilon-class mechanics marks a leap in the technological level of the entire civilization. As long as she can thoroughly research the secrets of the demon god machine, then it won't be long before she can also turn Uncle Yu into a demon god-level being. On the battlefield of Chernobyl, Zhang Yi and the others fell into a short silence. Even though they were on opposing sides, they were still amazed by Loredek's strength. Zhang Yi was pondering whether to execute the Reaper of Love's plan. But that would also entail certain risks for him. It would be best to find someone to cooperate with him. Chaos, we can't delay any longer. Morana's voice sounded in Zhang Yi's ear. The longer we wait, the more intense the unease in my heart becomes. This feeling is getting stronger and stronger. Zhang Yi looked at the abyss behind Loredek and said, "You don't have to tell me, anyone with eyes can see it." Indeed, everyone could see it. The entire abyss was shrouded in a hazy black mist. No, it wasn't a mist, but rather a strange black rune that spiraled upwards. They looked like a swarm of snakes, or a tangle of discarded negatives. The mysterious and complex runes carried a heart-stopping magic. It was as if the doors of hell were opening, as if something terrible was about to be unleashed. Morana stepped forward. She was finally going to make her move. "Everyone, please create an opportunity for me to make my move." From beginning to end, Morana had never used her full power, but no one said anything. After all, some mutants had very special abilities, and there were strict requirements for using them. For example, the mutants of the rules category. They didn't easily use their powers, but when they did, they had to see results. And the cost of failure for the mutants of the rules category was too high, so their presence on the battlefield was minimal. Leave it to us. Although no one knew what Morana intended to do, King Arthur raised his knight longsword, Odin god of war summoned his thunder spear, Emperor Indra drew his longbow to the full, and Olive's short sword flared with flame. Without hesitation, they launched a new attack on Loredek. Since Loredek did not attack, the power to attack lay in their hands. Loredeck seemed to have adapted to the fighting styles of each of them. His brain has an auxiliary computing system that gives him the ability to memorize everything, especially the battles of everyone present, which he has already seen one by one through the central system of mechanical civilization that is similar to the cloud. Loredeck is familiar with them. Familiar as it is impossible for his body to respond perfectly to facing the attacks of dozens of people at once. For this reason, he has to exert his best effort. His hands brandish the battle swords in a frantic dance, trying to balance between devouring and releasing, and he must also consider dealing with special ability users at the same time. Morana pressed her hands to the ground, and a snowstorm immediately sprang up around her. A huge ice storm appeared in the air, and blue and white ice and snow rose into the air like a furious tsunami. The entire land was covered in ice and snow. In this world of ice and snow ability users are the most privileged. They only need to exert 3% of their supernatural abilities to exert the full power of others. Because in such an environment, there is simply no need to make any effort to cool and condense the ice on a large scale. There is ready-made material everywhere. The ice storm rises up like a mountain from the earth, stretching for more than 10 kilometers, like a high wall standing in Chernobyl. Then the mountain collapses, and countless huge and menacing icicles roared down towards Loredeck. Morana stood at the top of the ice storm, charging towards Loredeck like a surfer riding a tsunami. Physical attacks could not be swallowed with sword devouring, so Loredeck chose to absorb the power of other people's attacks and then slash downwards with a single sword at the sky-high snowstorm.